Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of 4Expedition Unplugged. I'm Scott Luthold. Well, I've decided I'm going to continue on sharing my midweek inspirational videos, and so I've got a lot of content to share and some inspiration I want to share with all of you. Now, many of you have come to this channel because you're used to watching our outdoor adventure videos or our cabin life series or something like that, and I really appreciate you coming to the channel and having those things entertain you. And I hope they also inspire you. But I have a lot more depth than outdoor adventure and cabin construction. So I want to share some things with you, and I feel like if I feel compelled to do it and I feel inspired to do it, then I will do it. And so I've shared a couple of episodes with you talking about different ways that you can either improve your life or create a more enriched life. And so from time to time, I'm maybe laying in bed staring at the ceiling, or I'm out on a hike somewhere, and some kind of inspirational content comes to mind that I might want to share. And so last night, I was laying in bed staring at the ceiling, and I keep a notebook next to the bed, and sometimes I'll take notes in the middle of the night, something that comes to mind. But two key words came to mind last night that I feel are really important to share, and they're words that have been used to describe me in the past. And last week I shared some key words as well, integrity and honor. And those are words that I try to live my life by and encourage all of you to do as well. But these two words have a lot more to do with real, true, down-to-earth grit experiences that I've had in my life. And those words are persistence and perseverance. So I'm going to share with you the actual definitions of each of those two terms. So persistence is continuing firmly on a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. Whereas perseverance, which is a similar word but different, perseverance is described as persistence in doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success. Now, the reason I say that these words have been used to describe me is that in my life and in my career, I've had a pretty difficult uphill battle to get to where I am today. And nothing really came easy. Things took time. They took a significant effort on my part. And they took two things, persistence and perseverance. Now, my son was once asked to describe me or to share something about me that inspired him. And he said that his dad, me, does what he says he's going to do and does what he wants to do. So I think in his mind, what he sees is that I'm someone who decides I want to do something, and I don't just talk about it, I set out to do it. And sometimes I don't know the path, and like I shared last week, I build those goals going from the outcome back to where I am today to create that path to get to where I want to go. My mom was once asked to describe me in a single word, and she used the word persistent. So I guess I've demonstrated or illustrated to the people in my life that in order for me to be able to achieve certain things, I've had to continually remain positive. I've had to believe that I could achieve something. And if I set out to do something, I wasn't sure how long it was going to take or what path I was going to take to get there, but come hell or high water, I was going to make it happen. And that is persistence. Now, as a marketer, and some of you out there may be in sales and marketing, you understand that you have to have a reasonable amount of persistence. You have to continue on a path towards something, knowing that you're going to face obstacles and always figuring out a way to get around or over those obstacles. So you have to remain continually persistent and remain positive in the process. Now, perseverance to me has more to do with overcoming adversity. I've had huge challenges in my life, and I'll share a bit of those stories with you here in a second, but to be someone who can withstand sometimes huge challenges, huge setbacks, huge letdowns, and still continue on and push forward to make something happen is someone who is going to see success at some point or another. So if you do want to be successful in whatever it is that you set out to do, then you have to have those two things. You have to be perseverant and you have to have persistence. Without those two things, 90% of the world will give up and not see success. I have worked with many entrepreneurs, founders of startups, and I've seen some of them completely flourish and take off. But in the process, they had to overcome major challenges. They had to overcome huge roadblocks that were put before them. I've also seen founders and CEOs of startups start up a huge company. In other words, what I mean by huge is hiring lots of people, raising a lot of investor capital. We're talking anywhere from $6 to $40 million of investor capital, and burn through it trying to make something happen. And at the end of the day, the whole thing collapses around them and they're left with holding the bag of debt or whatever. And so I've seen CEOs go from successfully creating billion-dollar companies and exiting, and then starting another company and it failing, starting another company and it failing, starting another company and it failing. And before you know it, they've lost every penny that they earned from that original company they started. So you have to have a tremendous amount of perseverance if you're going to go it alone and start your own business or what have you. It's frankly, it's much easier to go to work for a company that's paying you a paycheck and giving you responsibilities and you having to live up to those responsibilities or executing more than they even asked for to begin with. That is way easier. It is much more difficult to start your own business. And there's a statistic out there where founders, one of the highest levels of suicide are founders of companies. Because frankly, no matter what, if the company is suffering or it's going down the toilet, you have to remain positive, because if you put out there to all of your potential customers that you're suffering or your business is failing, they're not going to do business with you. So you have to continually remain positive. And so a lot of founders they bury that. They bury that pain and suffering and all of that. And eventually it leads them to take their lives in some cases. So I can't stress just how big and important those two key words are in you reaching your goals. Last week, I talked about that you can have what you want. And I also said that there's a lot of things that you have to consider when you consider this idea that you can have what you want. And two of the very big things that you have to consider is, do you have the ability to continue on, to be persistent? And do you have the ability to withstand challenges after challenges after challenges and persevere? And so these are two things that I've kind of learned in my life that I've had to embrace and champion over in order to be able to push through, because sometimes it just seems like nothing's going to happen. Nothing's ever going to happen. But eventually it does. Eventually you see a light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually you see a crack, and that crack eventually breaks open. I give you a couple of examples. When I was in my 20s, I was in college. I was in a community college in graphic arts. And a woman came up to me that I was in class with, and I guess she was probably in her mid-40s. I was in my early 20s. And she was in the classes with me, and she loved my work. And it turned out that she was working for a toy company, and she really liked what I was doing. She asked me to illustrate some children's books for their company, and that's how I got involved with the company to begin with. Well, I started to work hard. I mean, at the time, I was in college. I was working for a small town newspaper, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. And I decided I was going to do this work for this company as a freelance graphic artist. It was one of the earlier jobs that I had landed in the graphic arts field outside of my day job. And so there were nights that I would come home from work, I would eat some dinner, and I would work straight through until 5 o'clock the next morning, take a shower, and go to my day job. No sleep. There were nights that I sat in front of the computer, um, and I'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning with my face laying on the keyboard and my computer beeping at me because my keyboard keys were pressed. At the time, the company had been outsourcing most of the creative services to a small group, a small creative agency in Phoenix, and this is where the company was based. And I realized that I needed to win the company, win the company's trust, so that they would move away from that company and consider working only with me. Well, at the time, this is early days. This is before Adobe really took off. And I didn't know Adobe Photoshop. I didn't know Adobe Illustrator. I didn't know Adobe Premiere. I didn't know Adobe InDesign. I didn't know any of these things. In fact, at the time, Adobe InDesign wasn't even Adobe InDesign. It was some other software program, Aldus PageMaker or something, whatever it was. I don't remember. Quark Express. Anyway, these are software programs that some of you may have no idea about, but they're all design software. Well, I realized in order to be able to win this company over, I needed to submit a design for a particular project that they were working on, even unsolicited, so that they could compare my work with this other person. Well, I picked up a book on Photoshop and I self-taught myself how to use the software program, and I executed on creating an absolutely beautiful design for a particular electronic toy product that they were considering putting out. And I presented to them. They didn't know I was going to present, but I presented it to them and they loved it. Well, as it went, which, by the way, learning Photoshop and then executing that design and then finding a place where I could output super high quality color was, at the time, was very difficult. It took me a ton of time outside of my day job. I gave up sleeping for a while. Well, I won them over. And before you know it, they gave me all of their contract work. As that company opportunity developed, eventually they were giving me so much work that I went to the CEO of the company and I told him I needed some kind of a contract. And he said, I tell you what, Scott, how about you consider going to work for us? And I said, okay, I would consider that. And as time went on, the CEO decided he liked me. He offered me a job as basically an art director on staff. And at the time, they only had maybe 12 employees. And as time went on, I was promoted to creative director, and I was in charge of hiring a staff. And then I was promoted to director of product development, and my pay went up. And by the time I was there, it was all said and done, I was there, I think, about 7.5 years. And I went from being an art director to a creative director to a director of product development, making a lot of money, managing between 17 and 20 people, overseeing the development of probably $3 to $4 million budget in electronic toys that were all being manufactured over in Shenzhen, China. When I first started with the company, all the products were made in a factory in Phoenix. We eventually moved it over to Shenzhen. I was a part of that process. So I grew with the company, and every step of the way, I can promise you, every step of the way for that 7 years, I had to perform and prove myself and perform and prove myself. Well, fortunately and unfortunately, I was in my mid to late 20s and I was making, well over 6 figures. Owned my own home. I had all my friends around me were graduating from college. Nobody had purchased a home yet. I had a home. I was doing very, very well. Well, unfortunately, I didn't finish college because of it. And so that has presented its own challenges for the rest of my career. But those years where I had to teach myself something and I had to prove myself constantly to boards of directors and bankers and underwriters, because we were trying to go public, manufacturers overseas, as a young buck in my 20s, taught me a great deal, and frankly taught me a great deal more than if I were to finish college. Now, there have been challenges, me not finishing college. And it's been constantly an uphill battle. And there's been times when I've won, and there's been times when things didn't work out. So, for instance, I had interviews with Mattel Toys after that company, because we were manufacturing electronic toys for NASCAR, Nature Conservancy, DreamWorks, Disney, Fox Animation Studios. They were all working with us, and we were developing electronic toys for their brands. I even developed stuff for Star Wars and so forth. Well, anyway, it was a great experience. And so by the time I was about 29 years old, I left that company, and I ended up interviewing with Mattel Toys. And Mattel's based in Los Angeles. Well, from what I understand, there were 600 applicants for the job that I wanted. And it got down to between me and one other gentleman after months of interviews. And the reason they chose the other gentleman, even though I had a ton of experience, is because he had a degree. I've faced that challenge a number of times throughout my life and in my career. But I've always found a way to overcome it and push through it. And it's always taken me building trust in other people, in me, reaching out to people, being consistent in trying to reach out to people, being persistent, and overcoming the challenges that I've faced in order to get through to someone, to the point where I reach the goal that I've been, that I set out to achieve. So I am proof that things that you want, that you feel are out of your reach, are not out of your reach. It all comes down to you. 100% comes down to just you, no one else. It comes down to your commitment and your dedication and your belief in yourself. Simple, flat out. There's no other way to put it. If you don't believe in yourself, if you don't invest in yourself, if you don't reach for things and grab for things and make sure that you're able to grab a hold of them, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many challenges that you faced or you're going to face, you're just not going to see the kind of success that you're hoping for. A lot of people get very comfortable in the lives that they're living. Everybody needs to make a living somehow. Now, there's people who have trust funds. There are people who are born into families with money. There are people that are taught at a very early age how to invest in something because maybe their parent was, in the stock market or something like that. But if you're not one of those kinds of people, and even if you have a degree from a college, you're still going to have to drive what you want home. You're going to have to be the catalyst. You're going to have to be the engine that turns the wheels and puts rubber to the road and moves you forward to get to that place you want to be. It's just that simple. I'm proof that you can reach for things and you can reach out and grab them and grab a hold of them and make things happen. Last night I turned out the lights in the bed and I was laying in the bed, still thinking, my mind was still churning. And I flipped on the light to write something down that I wanted to share with all of you. I wrote, in the face of adversity, judgment, constant trials, setbacks, letdowns, it is those who keep going and push through to find a way over and around an obstacle that triumph. Don't give up on your dreams, wants, or needs. I don't really feel like there's much more to say in this video than that. This is what I believe. This is how I have achieved success, because I feel like things in my life haven't gone easily. But I feel like I'm totally blessed because of what I've set out to achieve and that I've accomplished and achieved. I've also had the opportunity to reshape my idea of success. Early on in my life, I felt like success had to do with money. And, when I talked about some of this stuff in the last episode, I had a comment from a gentleman who said, no, 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 money does bring you happiness because money pays for the things that bring you happiness. Well, so I want to be clear about my perspective on the idea of money does not bring you happiness. I feel like that saying has more to do with the fact that you have to find happiness within yourself. You can't look to other people. You can't look outside of yourself. You can't look to some material thing to find happiness. If you are innately happy, if you find a way to overcome adversity, shed the past, let go of past life traumas, if you stop looking at yourself as a victim in society, that you just weren't born into something that was, that allowed you to be able to achieve things easily, stop looking at yourself that way and dig deep down and start to find true happiness within yourself. You don't need money to be happy. This is all very true. I will say, though, that it does take money to be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve. So, for instance, I might have said to myself, I want to have a cabin in the mountains in the woods. Well, if I didn't have any money to do that, I would have to find another way. And there are other ways. You can certainly find an off-grid kind of property somewhere in the world where you could just cut down some trees, hand saw and mill trees and build your own cabin in the woods and create a life that doesn't cost anything, and if that's what you so desire. However, life becomes a lot easier when you have money to be able to achieve the things you're trying to achieve. And things can happen faster. When Heather and I were on our hike up in the Tetons, I mentioned that, we hiked all the way around Jenny Lake in order to be able to get to Cascade Canyon and hike up the canyon. If we would have chosen to take the ferry across the lake, which would have taken only about 10 minutes, we would have been able to hike further into the canyon than we were able to go because we would have more time and we'd have more energy. That's what money does. You can hike around the lake and then hike up into the canyon. You're just not going to be able to get as far because you don't have as much time and you don't have as much energy. Money allows things to happen faster, and it allows things to happen in a way that requires less effort on your part. Things happen and doors open much more easily and readily. So when you're thinking about the things that you want to achieve, think about the fact that first, you have to find happiness within yourself, whether you achieve something or you don't. And then if you can find a way to make a decent income to achieve your goals, you will be able to get further along your path in a shorter period of time. That's what money does. Money doesn't bring you happiness. It just makes it easier to achieve your goals. And when you achieve your goals, you're happier. That's just how it goes. It's just the way life works. Until we have some other monetary system, we have some other system of trade, this is what we have the model we have to live within. It's just what it is. So being somebody who's been in sales and marketing for most of my career, and I'm not talking necessarily in the sales and marketing industry, I'm talking selling whatever it is that I have to sell, my services, me as a person. I've had to do a lot of that in my life, to sell myself to a potential employer, to sell myself to a potential client. I've gone into many meetings with CEOs of companies and vice presidents and sometimes boards of directors, and having to sell who I am as a person so that these people trust that I am the person that they're going to be able to count on to execute on something that they asked me to execute on, whether that was as an employee of their company or whether it was me as a branding agency outsourced. There's something very important that I need to share that has to do with this whole idea of selling and marketing yourself or something or product or a service or whatever it is. and that is belief. You truly have to believe not only in the product you're selling or the service you're selling, but you have to believe in yourself. Sales starts with you. If you're going to sell yourself or a product or service, you need to sell that belief to yourself. You need to truly believe in yourself or that product or service in order to be able to go out and try to sell it to someone else with integrity. Otherwise, you're just living a lie. This is why it's so important to align your job with your work. You can be making widgets. It doesn't really matter. Making widgets on an assembly line. And if you truly believe that what you're doing is making a difference, if you truly believe that you have the power to influence people around you, inspire people around you, and I guess be a pillar in your community, well, then you're living with integrity and honor for yourself. Well, that starts with belief. And if you believe in yourself and you believe that what you're doing and what you're selling is worthwhile to the other person, well, then you're going to have success. But it really truly starts with selling whatever it is you're selling to yourself. You have to believe in it. That's why I feel like even though there's a lot of people out there that have maybe what would be considered mundane jobs, still feel like they're happy. Because first of all, they found happiness within themselves, not with something outside of themselves. And they feel like they are dedicated and committed to their work in their lives. And so when they go to their job, they can be happy doing whatever it is they're doing. I think that is a noble way to live life. Now, if you're doing something right now that you don't believe in, if you're feeling like your life needs change, if you're feeling like your career needs change, if you feel like you're not living your best life, if you feel like there's more to life than what you're doing and you're not feeling like you're living with purpose, well, then you need to be looking at this idea of belief and selling yourself. And if it takes you making a shift in your life, well, then make the shift, because you're not getting any younger. My dad died at age 56. I'm turning 53 next week. I mean, technically speaking, if I was my dad, I'd have three years left to live. And he didn't know he was going to die. He had an aneurysm, brain aneurysm, just died just like that. It changed my life forever. And it made me realize that I don't know how much time I have. And I could drop dead at any moment. I could drop dead right after this video. And at least, if I did, I feel like I was living with purpose. And I would feel like I was living in integrity and honoring what I believed I should be doing with my life. And if making products for some company on an assembly line is something that you're happy doing, well, then do it. There's nothing wrong with that. I would go do that if I felt like it was something that made a difference. So let's say, for instance, it was a product that I felt like was going to revolutionize society. I might be very happy to go and make widgets on an assembly line. For me, talking to you, pursuing my dreams and goals, and inspiring others to do things with their lives is what is meaningful to me. Now, as I mentioned in my last 2 videos ago, I've been looking for a corporate position with a company. I feel like I want to do that because I want to make the money to be able to achieve my goals. I don't feel like I need the money to be happy because I'm very happy with what I've got and where I'm at and what I'm doing. But I also feel like taking a position with a corporation is going to put me in a position where I can make some significant impact on people in place. And so I want to do that not only to make money, but also to further my life's work. And in the process, help another company, help people that are pursuing their own goals, achieve their goals. So I can be a part of a greater thing for someone else, but I can also be, fulfilling my life's work and then making the money I want to make in order to be able to fill my personal life dreams. All of this ties together. And if you're only fulfilling one part of the equation and there's something missing, that might be why you've not reached the level of success that you've hoped to reach. You've got to look at all the parts and pieces of the equation and make sure each one of those things is greased so that it's moving smoothly, and it helps the next cog move smoothly, and it helps the next cog move smoothly, and you've got this well-oiled machine, as they say. If you're overlooking certain aspects of the equation, you're just not going to reach the level of success that you've always wanted to reach. You have to really look at it all, and you have to really be honest with yourself whether or not you care about each one of those cogs being well-oiled. Sometimes we say to ourselves, well, I'm going to reach a certain level of success, but I'm not going to worry about this over here. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. I'm going to come home and just, binge watch something on Netflix. Well, I do that sometimes, but I'm also the kind of person who, if I've got something I want to achieve and it's inspiring me enough to work on it, I will work on it and work on it and work on it and work on it and work on it. And I am persistent until it's done. You can be that kind of a person too, if you so choose. It all depends on how badly you want the things that you want and how clear you are about those things. You also have to be really clear about whether or not you think you're going to follow through. That is where a lot of people fail. They work at something, and they give up. And then they move on to something else. They lose interest. Now, I can admit that I'm that kind of person. In some ways, I've got a lot of things that I feel like I'm capable of doing and interested in doing, and I'll carry some of them forward, and some of them I just let go of. Other ones, I say to myself, I just don't have the energy to do that. It's just going to take way too much effort and energy. So I'll let go of certain things, but I will focus on certain things. I remember somebody telling me once, I met this really great guy. He's a aspiring author. He's got 7 books in the works. And I responded to her and I said, well, okay, that's great that he's got 7 books in the works. Is he going to have something within himself to finish one of those books, get it out the door, get it published, promote it, sell it, and get it in the hands of the right people that are going to take it to the next level? Almost like when you're in a relay race in track, handing the baton, to the anchor. The anchor is going to take it home. Does that person have within themselves the ability to finish something they started and finish it well? And once they finish it well, are they the kind of person that realizes that that's the starting line, not the finish line? When that book is done, now they've got to go out and sell it and promote it and make something happen with it. Otherwise, it just doesn't get read. Think about that as well. You have to be able to follow through and get things done. And when I say get things done, I don't mean you have a list of 50 things that need to be done on something and you cut it short and you knock 25 things off that list and you just say, oh, it's good enough. Sometimes good enough is okay, but if you really want to achieve something and you really want to succeed, you've got to be willing to just push through and have perseverance until it's done. Be persistent. And then when you're done with that book, for instance, if it's a book that you're writing, whatever, be willing to take the next step and push it forth. I've watched a lot of startups crash and burn because of the lack of follow-through from the executive team. You have to have vision. You have to be willing to steer the ship and take it where it needs to go. It's just that simple. So you just need to be really clear about what it is you want, and you have to create a process that's reasonable to follow. You have to execute on each step one at a time, taking your time and getting it done, and have follow-through. So just keep that in mind when you set out to achieve something that you're hoping to be able to achieve. I was on LinkedIn the other day and I saw a post from someone. It was one of those sort of meme graphics that said that a leader needs to create trust in a team to succeed. And I made a comment below that said, yes, but in order to get that trust, they need to have integrity and honor. they need to be able to show their team that they can be trusted. So it was interesting, that post talked about the fact that a leader needed to have trust in a team to succeed, but they didn't talk about how that leader was able to obtain that trust. And frankly, you have to live by example in all aspects of your life, in your work and in your personal life. And if you live by example, you become an inspiration to those around you. And those people, they come around you and they hold you tightly and they support you in your efforts and your initiatives. If you want to be a good leader, you build trust. If you want to build trust, demonstrate what you want your team to do and be. Be that person that leads. Lead the charge. Lead by example. So as I mentioned earlier, I went through a program called the Mankind Project. And one of the things we do in the Mankind Project toward the end is we pick a name for ourselves. And this is a name that is used to refer to us within the program. And it's sort of a Native American name, if you will. And you pick the name yourself. So I took a great deal of time to think about what my name would be. And I chose Sequoia Hawk with Open Eyes. And I want to break down for you why I chose that name. So the first word, sequoia, refers to sequoia trees. Sequoia trees are these gigantic trees that exist, and they've been around for thousands of years. And in my opinion, sequoia trees hold a significant amount of wisdom. They've seen a lot more than we will ever see in our lifetimes. So I chose the word sequoia. Hawk, I love hawks. I chose hawk because they have sharp focus. They can see at distances, and when they hone in on a target, they can fly toward it with precision. Hawks have just an incredible ability to see at distance and have sharp focus. And the reason I chose Open Eyes is because I wanted to, remind myself that I always needed to move forward with my eyes wide open. I needed to be clear about what it is I was doing, what I wanted to do with my life, the steps I wanted to take forward, and I needed to be an observer of my surroundings, knowing the people around me, knowing how the things that I wanted or the goals that I was trying to achieve, the steps I was taking, how those were affecting the people around me, how I was going to be able to impact the world that I see before me. So these are the reasons I chose the name. Now, you don't have to go through Mankind Project to pick a name for yourself. But if you pick a name for yourself, and it could just be something that you keep internally, come up with something that continues to drive you forward and continues to help you maintain the direction you want to go. So I am Sequoia Hawk with Open Eyes, and now you know why. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, or if they're more personal in nature, you can reach out to me on forexpedition.com. I'm always happy to talk with people and connect. If you are interested in this kind of content, I'll probably put up another video next week, and it'll be about another subject that is going to help you further expand your consciousness and help you move forward in your life and create the life that you always wanted. Thank you.